I'm Rachel Silva, and I work for the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program. Thank you all for coming, and welcome to the Sandwiching and History Tour of the Nannie C. Wright House. This tour, for any architects in the audience, this tour is worth 1 hour of HSW continuing education credit through the American Institute of Architects, and you may see me after the tour if you're interested in getting that credit. Located in the Central High School Neighborhood Historic District, which was National Register listed in 1996, the Nannie C. Wright House was built about 1909. Hey, the cyclist. And the house is an American Foursquare with an eclectic mix of architectural details. Also, I want to introduce to you all, standing behind me, the owners of the house, and thank the owners for allowing us to tour their beautiful home today. This is John Steele and Whitney Patterson Steele. So thank you so much, y'all, for letting us come into your house today. Historically, Little Rock's Central High School neighborhood was called the West End because the area was literally at the western edge of the city. Platted in 1877, the Centennial Edition is the largest edition in the neighborhood. It was so named to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence in 1876. Only a few scattered homes existed in the West End until the mid to late 1890s, when significant construction began. However, Little Rock residents were enticed to visit the West End whenever the Little Rock Street Railway Company opened the West End Park at the end of its streetcar line. That happened on May 16, 1885. West End Park covered 6 blocks from 14th, which is now Daisy Bates, down to 16th, and then from Park over to Jones on the west. The densely wooded park boasted a large pavilion for dancing, refreshment stands, a bicycle track, roller coaster, and a lake for boating. Admission to the park was usually 25 cents for adults and 15 cents for children. From all accounts in the Arkansas Gazette, West End Park was a hit as soon as it opened. The park was especially popular on Sunday afternoons when music was provided by the Little Rock Band. During the heat of the summer, the streetcar company promised to keep the line running and the park open late for, quote, the accommodation of those who wish to pass the hot nights out in the suburbs. Yes, the suburbs. The first amateur baseball games were played at West End Park in 1893. In 1894, a baseball field and grandstand were built on the far western edge of the park. This became the home field for the Little Rock Baseball Association, and later, the city's first minor league baseball team, the Little Rock Travelers. West End Park's field was also used for Major League spring training. The grandstand was rebuilt in 1915 and named in honor of Judge William Marmaduke Kavanaugh, also the namesake of Kavanaugh Boulevard, who died in February of 1915. Kavanaugh had been president of the Southern League since 1903, and he was a big supporter of the Little Rock Travelers. Kavanaugh Field was the home of the Travelers until 1932, when Ray Winder Field opened. And Quigley Stadium, built in 1936 by the WPA, now occupies the site of Kavanaugh Field. After the streetcar company opened Forest Park up in Pulaski Heights in 1904, they were no longer interested in operating West End Park, so they sold it to the city of Little Rock. However, the park grounds outside the baseball field were no longer maintained after about 1912. In 1922, a portion of the park was reestablished as Civitan Park, and it was maintained by the Little Rock Civitan Club, but that only lasted about 5 years because in 1927, the new Little Rock Senior High School was built on the other side of the former park property. And Park Street, of course, was so named because it was the park's eastern boundary, and that's pretty much the only reminder of that area's past.
How about Battery Street?
How about Battery Street? Was so named because there was a battery at the farthest north end of the street overlooking the Arkansas River, like a defensive battery. Okay. In the 1890s, real estate developers began to advertise the sale of lots in the West End. Most homes in the neighborhood were built between 1900 and 1930. Although the streetcar line had slightly changed its course by 1913, it still offered excellent service to the West End. According to the Arkansas Gazette, the Little Rock Railway and Electric Company's 15th Street line, quote, traversed the southwest portion of the city, passing through the most fashionable residential district. The West End was a solid middle-class neighborhood. The cost of homes in the early 20th century ranged from about $2,000 for a modest wood frame house to between $5,000 and $7,000 for a two-story home on Summit, Marshall, Wolf, or Battery Streets. These property values remained stable until at least the mid-20th century. A 1940 real estate survey indicated that the property values in the West End were similar to those in Pulaski Heights, with the exception of the highest bracket of homes that were worth $20,000 and up. Those homes only existed in the most exclusive residential additions of Pulaski Heights, like Edge Hill and Prospect Terrace. Located on Lot 5, Block 31, in the Centennial Edition, the Nannie Wright House was built about 1909 and is essentially an American Foursquare with an eclectic mix of architectural details, as you can see. That's why we're going to talk outside so you can look at the house. An American Foursquare is a two-story box-shaped house with 4 rooms downstairs and 4 rooms upstairs. The dental molding right above me on the edge of the porch, and the corbels right here, as well as the triangular pediment. If any of you over here can see, on the north side of the house, there's a little bump out where the stairs are. There's a triangular pediment on that bump out over there. All of those details on the house are colonial revival in style. Whereas the brackets under the eaves, all the prominent brackets up at the top, square brick porch supports, the casement windows on the second story, the transom windows throughout with different decorative pane arrangements, and built-in window seats in the front entryway that you'll see whenever we go inside. Those are all representative of the English arts and crafts movement. So a couple different styles on this house. But this particular variation of the American Foursquare is also known as a Seattle box. A trademark of the Seattle box is the presence of those really cool extended bay windows up on the front facade on the second floor, often with ornamental brackets below them, so everybody see that. Other characteristics include the low hipped roof with prominent dormer windows, front porch supported by blocky columns, and a front entrance that's either offset to the left or right, but not in the center. And the basic plan, I'll hold up, I just have one of these. This is a plan for a Seattle box. Does everybody see? You can look at this closer if you want to, whenever we go in. The basic plan for a Seattle box was first described by architect Victor W. Voorhees in his residential plan book, Western Home Builder, which went through 6 editions between 1907 and 1911. Voorhees practiced architecture in Seattle during the early 20th century. And his plan for a, quote, Northwest Craftsman became so popular in Seattle and throughout the Pacific Northwest that it became known as the Seattle Box. And while Nannie Wright had no obvious connections to Seattle that I found, it is likely that she found the plans for this house and the homes at 1615 and the original house on the site of 1611. That's a newer home down past it. It's likely that she found the plans for all three of these houses in Western Home Builder or a similar publication. And I've got a picture of the house that was at 1611 originally. It's not very big, I know, but you can see it up close later. Okay. This one at 1611 was very similar to this house at 1617. Okay. In 1907, there were only 3 houses on this block. 1601, which was up at the corner, that's now gone, there's a vacant lot there. 1608, which was here on the site of the apartment, so that's gone. And the one that's changed at the street numbers over the years, 1612 and 1614, across the street from us, which is still there. Those 3 houses have been built in the late 1890s, just a block south of the old Centennial Elementary School. The front entrance of the Centennial School was at 1500 Wolf Street, faced the next block over. And you all can see the edge of Centennial Park. That's what I'm talking about. The front entrance was over there. The Romanesque Revival style school was designed by Little Rock architect Thomas Harding Sr., and it opened in September 1894. The school closed in 1971, and it was demolished with the exception of the front steps and the little entrance porch. And that was intended to serve as a focal point for a new city-owned park on that site. Centennial Park was dedicated on November 12, 1975. And I mention that because it's an important landmark in the neighborhood. So Nannie C. Wright built the houses at 1611, 1615, and this one, 1617, in 1908 and 1909 for herself and her 2 married daughters. All 3 houses are similar in plan, and I showed you that the one at 1611 originally was very close to this one. The remaining houses on this block were built by the 1920s, and the apartments were built in the early 1940s. Nannie Caroline Wood Wright was born on January 26, 1848, at Charlottesville, Virginia, to Drury Wood and his wife, Laura Pori Wood. In 1872, she married Captain William Henry, who went by Dan. I have no idea why. Captain William Henry Dan Wright, I know, just to make it confusing. And in 1875, they moved to Little Rock. The couple had 4 children, a son named Drury Wright, and 3 daughters, Mary Wright Bodman, Laura Wright McClurkin, and Nan Wright Wendell. Nannie Wright's husband, W.H. Dan Wright, was one of the city's most well-known residents, and he was a pioneer in Arkansas's cotton oil industry. Captain Wright was born on August 11, 1849, at Senatobia, Mississippi. He served in the Confederate Army and settled at Memphis after the war. Wright worked in the cotton oil business at Memphis, and then after he moved to Little Rock in 1875, he helped to start the Little Rock Oil and Compress Company, which manufactured, I'm trying to get the ad, there we go. This is from an 1887 Little Rock City directory for the Cotton Oil Company that he ran. It's got his name on it. So that company manufactured cottonseed oils, cake, and meal. And historically, cottonseed oil was used for light and for heat, to put in lamps, and it was used for animal feed, fertilizer, and later for cooking. Cottonseed oil was what they made Crisco shortening out of originally. Not anymore, but that's what they used to make it out of. The company's Little Rock mill was located at the northeast corner of East 2nd and Bird Streets, which is presently presently the green space in front of the Clinton Presidential Library. The Little Rock Oil and Compress Company also operated mills at Brinkley, Helena, Newport, Fort Smith, Texarkana, Pine Bluff, and at Arkansas City. W.H. Wright initially served as secretary and treasurer, and he was later promoted to vice president. The chain of cotton oil mills was later purchased by the American Cotton Oil Company, and Wright served as vice president and manager of that company's Arkansas interests until 1897, when he resigned to start the Pine Bluff Cotton Oil Company, of which he was president and manager until the end of 1902. Wright also served as president of the Brinkley, Helena, and Indian Bay Railroad, later known as the Arkansas Midland Railroad, and ultimately a branch of Missouri Pacific. While visiting New York City in 1903, Wright was, quote, taken ill, and he never fully recovered. He died on January 30th, 1905, at his Little Rock home at 810 Cumberland Street, which is no longer there, and was buried in the family plot at Mount Holly Cemetery. According to the 1907 Little Rock City Directory, Wright's widow, Nannie C. Wright, continued to live in the family home at 810 Cumberland with her youngest child, Nan, for a couple of years after her husband's death. By 1908, though, Nannie Wright lived at 1611 South Battery, the house formerly on the site where you see where the newer home is, right there. And she lived there with her daughter, Nan. Her other two daughters, Mary Wright Bodman and Laura Wright McClurkin, along with their husbands, lived there at 1615 South Battery at that time. They were all in the same house. By 1910, though, the house here at 1617 was completed, and Nannie Wright had moved into this one with her youngest child, Nan. 1615, she then gave to her daughter, Laura, and son-in-law, Felix McClurkin, who owned and operated McClurkin's Drugstore at 700 Main Street. 1611, the one farthest to the north, became the residence of Nannie's daughter, Mary, and her son-in-law, Ernest Bodman, then Assistant Secretary of the Union and Mercantile Trust Company. He was a banker. About 1919, Nannie Wright moved in with her daughter and son-in-law, Laura and Felix McClurkin, in the house next door at 1615. And the 1920 census actually lists her twice, which I thought was interesting. Both of her daughters had their mother listed at the bottom on their census record. I don't know why, but they did. They had her living at 1611 and at 1615. But I think she really stayed here at 1615. Nannie Wright would have been in her early 70s at that time. About 1927, the Bodmans, her daughter Mary, they moved to a house in the upscale Prospect Terrace addition in the Heights. And Nannie Wright continued to live here at 1615 next door at the home of her daughter, Laura McClurkin. And Nannie Wright died June 26, 1930 in the house next door. She was 82 years old. So now the later occupants of this house at 1617, after Nannie Wright moved out of here about 1919, the home belonged to Robert H. McNair and his wife Bertie. McNair was president of the Little Rock Barrel and Box Company, which was at 1420 East 6th Street, over there east of Rocktown Distillery and kind of across, pretty much right across the street from the Dara Company, if y'all are familiar with that part of town. All that's left are some foundations right next to the railroad spur where that Barrel and Box Company was. The McNair family lived here until about 1938. From 39 to 41, this house was occupied by Mrs. Jessie W. McLaughlin, widow of state legislator and Lonoke County farmer William Heber McLaughlin. Granville H. Sutton and his wife, Dolly, 6 when their kids were grown and they wanted to downsize. Granville Sutton was the superintendent of the Little Rock Municipal Water Works. In the 1960s, the house was occupied by Luke and Mary Arnett. Mr. Arnett was general counsel for the State Employment Security Division until his death in 1968. And from 1970 to present, the house has changed ownership about every 5 to 10 years or so. Before John and Whitney Steele purchased the house in August 2014, it was owned by Todd Rainey and used as a rental property. But I do want to say that I know we have at least a couple people here that have lived in the house before the Burrises are here, and y'all lived in the house in the 80s until 92? Okay. Now some details about the house, and then we'll go inside. The home has about 2,300 square feet, 4 bedrooms, all upstairs, like I was telling you, 4 on top, 4 on bottom, 2 baths. The house originally had an open 2-story sleeping porch on the rear elevation, and that was enclosed in the 1920s or 30s. The house has the original windows, its original interior doors, and wood floors. The entryway, make sure and look whenever you go inside at the built-in window seats in the entryway. And the house originally had 2 sets of pocket doors, which have been gone for a long time. When John and Whitney acquired the house, there were no original fixtures, light fixtures left in the house, so you'll notice whenever you go inside that they've had a lot of fun with it, and they have some cool, funky, modern fixtures throughout the house. And John and Whitney recently remodeled the kitchen. They took out a wall. You'll be able to tell where the wall was taken out between the kitchen and the enclosed back porch to enlarge the space and open it up. And that space now has new flooring, cabinets, appliances, and new wood wainscoting. Does anybody have any questions for me before we go inside?
Was there ever a garage out back?
There was a garage out back, yes. Not there anymore.
Rachel, was Wright Avenue named for this family?
It was not. That's a good question. She asked if Wright Avenue was named for this family. As far as I know, they weren't related to those Wrights. Wright Avenue is named for Weldon E. Wright, who platted Wright's Addition, which is more over in the governor's mansion part of town.
You mentioned a corbel. What's a corbel?
Corbel, this piece right here.
Is it possible that you could scan your speech online so we can...
She asked if it's possible to scan the speech. All of the scripts that I write go on our website after the fact, arkansaspreservation.com. Or I'm happy to give you a card and I can email it directly to you. And Shelley was motioning. She's filming me talking, so that also goes on our YouTube channel, Arkansas Preservation YouTube channel. Anybody else? Okay, well thank you all for being here. And the next tour is Friday, May 6th at the Folk Building, which is where Bennett's Military Supply used to be. Now it's the home of CJRW at 300 Main Street. All right, thanks y'all.